Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Von Rudenberg is absent. Deputy Mayor Canestrino?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Sims?
Here.
Councilmember Pataglia is absent. Mayor LaBrus.
Here.
This meeting is being held in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6 et sec. Notice having been published according to law with a copy on file in the city clerk's office and a copy posted on the bulletin board in City Hall.
Thank you. Would everybody please rise for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I think before we go into the agenda, we'll do the proclamation, if that's okay with you.
Yes, sir.
All right. We have a proclamation this evening for three folks who actually work at the same place I work, Hackensack University Medical Center. And could I please have, I see your last names there, Nurse McLean, Security Guard Mr. Diaz, and Nurse Allison Piccoli. Please come up. Yeah. Not wait. Okay, which one's Allison? You? How are you? It's from the Office of the Mayor of the City of Hackensack. Whereas on June 6, 2017, at approximately 12 a.m. midnight, Nurse Michaela McLean was ending her shift as an emergency room department nurse at Hackensack University Medical Center, when she, along with Hackensack University Medical Center night security guard Christopher Diaz, heard screaming. And whereas Nurse McLean and security guard Diaz saw something on fire by the railroad tracks. Once closer, they realized the person was engulfed in flames and quickly stepped into action, taking off their shirts and trying to put out the fire to save this person's life. And whereas Nurse Allison Piccoli was also nearby during this incident and also jumped into action by alerting a nearby Hackensack police officer and immediately calling 911. And whereas Nurse McLean and security guard Diaz put their lives at risk, not knowing that the accelerant on the person was kerosene, much more volatile than gasoline. And whereas Nurse McLean and Nurse Piccoli then attended to the injured person, providing first aid and other emergency services till other emergency services responded. Now therefore I, John P. LaCrosse Jr., Mayor of the City of Hackensack, along with the members of the City Council, do hereby honor and express our gratitude to Nurse Michaela McLean, Security Guard Christopher Diaz, and Nurse Allison Piccoli for their bravery and willingness to help someone in distress. Thank you very much, guys. It takes a certain breed of people. You know, we have our first responders, but when somebody in this case becomes the first responder, it's truly a heroic feat to actually go and actually take off some of your clothing and try to put somebody out who's on fire. You don't know what's on them, what's going to happen to you. And it really was a great display of bravery on all your parts. And City of Hackensack truly appreciates it. I'm sure Hackensack University Medical Center is very proud of you. Hackensack's proud of you. And again, we thank you so much. Thank you. Get some pictures. And yes, that's why I wanted to do some pictures real quick. I see Adams here. I guess he'll get this to Officer Diaz, right? You knew about it, right? Yeah. You're welcome. John, no worries. You're welcome.
Do one with your proclamations open?
Thank you again.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much so much. Awesome. Take care, guys. All right, we're going to move right along because we have one of the largest agendas I've seen in a while, so I'll turn it over to the city manager with his agenda. Hackensack University Medical Center, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Take care, guys.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and
Hey, Joe.
Council, invited guests. This is the city manager report for the Council of the Whole for August 22nd, 2017. First on the agenda is a presentation done by Fran Reiner, our city planner for the M&M building. Yeah, no problem.
I'm going to shine it right in your eyes, Ted, so.
Yep.
Yeah, just got to turn it.
Come join us, Ted.
So this is what this is like.
I want to know. Before you start, friend, let me just say why this presentation is happening. This presentation is being made at the request of the City Council. That our planner, DMR, Fran Ryder, was asked to do a study on the possibility and feasibility and what it would cost to move the M&M Center from its existing location where it's planned to be redone versus moving it to Johnson Park with a totally alone freestanding building, correct?
Yes.
And what you're going to see here are the numbers, the costs, and what this is the first time it's being presented in public for you to see. So go ahead, thanks.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor, thank you very much for having me this evening. As you mentioned tonight, I'm going to be presenting a little bit about the proposed recreation center at the M&M building, which has been presented in the past to the Mayor and Council and to the Planning Board. And then I'm going to present to you an alternative that was considered for Johnson Park. I'm going to give you those options from a design standpoint and then from a cost standpoint for the city's consideration. So as I mentioned, we're going to go through the options. The two that we've looked at are Johnson Park versus the M&M building, which has been presented in the past. We're going to show you the difference in the program elements and why there are differences in those elements. Estimated costs for both potential projects, and then happy to answer any questions. I'm going to start with Johnson Park as an alternative. This is the Johnson Park as it currently exists. A couple of really important pieces to note with Johnson Park. Johnson Park is a green acre site, which means that you can only place recreational uses in that particular facility. You cannot place meeting rooms or other ancillary uses that are not specifically related to recreation and/or recreation uses. The yellow line running down the middle is the Bergen County Utility Authority easement. It's a 90-foot easement. It does not permit buildings to be built on top of it, although parking can be built on top of that. You have an existing grass field to the middle of the page, the existing turf field to the bottom of the page, the existing tennis courts. You can see where the existing greenhouse is. And then over where it says existing parking, this is actually parking that is off-site. It is owned by the office building to the top right, Normandy Partners. It's approximately 82 spaces. We've presented this option in the past. This is the Johnson Park facility, and you can see the size of the facility, how it would lay out. This particular piece of it includes a new road connection that would then be access to the existing 82 parking spaces. It takes the grass field, the large grass field, and makes two smaller size fields for U8 to U11 would be that size. What we looked at in terms of the M&M or the recreation facility on this particular site would be located in basically off of the existing entrance, adjacent and on top of where the greenhouse is located. And so this is the location that we're looking at. We're showing you also 2 parking lots that would support both the recreation center and be additional parking for the indoor sports facility. So that is kind of location-wise what we looked at from a design standpoint for the building. In terms of the program elements, as I mentioned, the particular property, Johnson Park, is located in the Green Acres. It's limited to recreational use. It does not permit any community facilities of any kind that are not related specifically to recreation center uses. So the building in its size, and this is just a diagram of what the building might look like, would total 17,300 square feet. It would be the same gymnasium size that is proposed at the M&M, which is the 2 different basketball courts, and then it would have all the ancillary uses that are required as a part of that facility, including the lobby, an office, bathrooms, and a snack bar, as well as storage. The parking would be shared between this particular facility and the indoor sports facility, and our estimated cost, having gone through this, would be $6,775,000. It's a rounded number, but that's the estimate. We have presented in the past the rec center at the M&M building, and the building, this particular building, there is no DEP issues or Green Acre issues on this site. The total building project size would be 23,000 square foot. That would be 15,000 square foot of new construction and 8,000 square foot of existing renovation to the existing building. And on the bottom right, you can see that's outlined and highlighted in a lighter color. That's the existing building within the envelope of the project. There are 4 community rooms that are proposed that could be used for any number of different purposes, including kids, after school, seniors, as a part of this design of this particular project. There were 77 spaces. We have looked at allocating an additional amount of spaces to get to 96 total on-site parking spaces as shown in this particular diagram. 31 off-street parking spaces between Holt and the church parking on off of Holt Street. And the cost for this is $6.155 million. That cost, and just to kind of break it down so it's comparative to the Johnson Park. So what you have here is on the left is the Johnson Park numbers, on the right is the M&M building. The site work and building construction cost for Johnson Park would be $5.25 million. The M&M building is $5.6 million. The remediation, demo, contingency, and general condition costs for Johnson Park would be roughly $750,000. The M&M building is $40,000. Just to note that the M&M building numbers are actual numbers. There's a bid received. We know that those are the numbers. The numbers on the left with Johnson Park are estimated numbers that could be higher, could be lower. And then the soft cost permitting, inspection, and escalation fees for Johnson Park would be $780,000, and for M&M it's estimated at $515,000. So the difference being the Johnson Park, which is a building that is roughly 17,300 square foot, has a smaller program, would cost more to construct than the M&M building, which would be 23,000 square foot. It would be approximately $600,000 less. You can see programmatically that the gymnasiums are the same size, the storage is very comparable, the common areas are comparable. The major differences are the senior center component, which is one of the 4 rooms, and then the 3 multi-purpose rooms, which all could be for different programming. So those are the 2 proposals side by side. Like I said, we were asked to kind of go through and determine what could be built. The limiting factor, again, on Johnson Park is that it is in a Green Acre property and does not permit any other uses other than recreation. So that's why the building is smaller, because we programmatically would not legally be allowed to provide any of those other uses that can be offered in the M&M building facility. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
The cost would be considerably higher for Johnson Park if the same building size were put.
Yeah, it would be approximately, so you would take the difference, which is 6,000 square foot, and multiply it by $225 a square foot would be the number that would be. So it would be in the $10 million range for the same comparable size building.
Frank, could you just briefly explain why the Johnson Park costs are higher primarily due to things like pilings, et cetera, because of the location, proximity to the river, et cetera?
Yes, so the largest issue that we have to contend with at Johnson Park is the piles and the underground remediation of the land in order to be able to support the facility. And so we have to provide a large enough contingency to be able to deal with that. And the soils are different. So what may be a 150-foot pile in one location, maybe 250-foot pile in another location, maybe 60-foot pile, and they may be within 15, to 50 feet of each other, those differences. So the real major costs are we have to demo and remediate the two existing buildings, and then we have to deal with the piles. Whereas in M&M building, we've already done all the due diligence and understand the costs, and they're already included in the numbers that we have. So when I say the number could be higher or it could be lower, it really depends on what the pile issues could be. But it could be significantly higher, and that would be an issue.
Sure.
I know the answer to this, but maybe you could explain the reason why Green Acres will not allow, because we have functions that happen at the M&M building. We have bingo and senior programs and issues where that, because of these conditions, the Green Acre not allowed. I just want to make sure that the public understands the reason why that is.
So in the history of Hackensack, at some point in the history of Hackensack, they took money from the state to assist in the renovation and/or fixing of public open space and parks. And so once you do that, all of the open space within the city goes on what's called the ROSI, which is the Register of Open Space Inventory. And there are parks that are determined to be, quote, funded parks, which are parks that specifically received money from the state for an improvement on that park. And there are unfunded parks, which are parks that are on the ROSI but haven't received money. The NJDEP regulations are extensive, hundreds of pages, and it's abundantly clear, and I've spoken to the several of the people at NJDEP about this particular site and about the uses that are permitted on this particular site, because it is on the Green Acre ROSI, and because it's a part of it's funded, part of it's unfunded, there is no permitted use other than recreational uses on this facility. So to the extent when I reached out to the New Jersey DEP and spoke with the manager for the Green Acres, and we had labeled one of the offices as administrative office, they brought into question whether or not that would be permitted. Until I explained that would be offices where actual recreation department individuals would be, they were then accepting of it. They would not accept a library. They would not accept a meeting room. They would not accept a senior center. None of those components are permitted because the city, when they took the money, they agreed to meet the requirements of the DEP and the Green Acres.
So for the record, if we moved M&M to Johnson Park, all these ancillary functions and activities that we have or programs would have to end because we have no facility for those currently?
They would not be permitted to be constructed in Johnson Park.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick, could you just touch briefly on if we were to move the project to Johnson Park, what would our losses be at the M&M building?
So you would have all of the soft costs related. So of the line items here, you would have somewhere in the ballpark of $400,000 to $450,000 of losses of money that has been spent in terms of making sure that the piles that were designed are appropriate and would work, as well as the soft costs, as well as all the work that's been done up to this point. That would all be at a loss. So you would not be able to recapture that, and that was not added on to the cost for Johnson Park. It was simply.
But technically, it would be added on.
You're correct. The city would be spending that money. Yes.
Sorry, how much did you say the loss would be?
It would be somewhere between $400,000 and $450,000 if you moved it to Johnson Park, because that's work and effort and that has already been spent that would not be able to be recaptured.
But basically, Johnson Park technically would be just a gymnasium compared to the M&M building, which is considered a recreation center?
Absolutely. You would only have a gymnasium. It would be the two courts and then a large court, but there would be no ability to do the rec rooms for kids, for after school, for large meetings. You know, we've had the senior piece to it. None of that would be associated with Johnson Park property.
Any other questions?
I think we should let the public while Fran's still here.
All right, well, Fran is here. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to speak on this and this only?
Or have questions, Fran?
Questions? None? Okay.
Thanks, Fran.
Thank you, Fran.
It may be worth noting that we do this with the planning board to fill our application. Maybe worth noting.
Yeah.
No, this is it.
This is it. One of the reasons this presentation was made, when this went for a, what they called a courtesy review in front of our planning board, the planning board recommended we look into other options. The only other option we had was Johnson Park that might be able to fit this type of facility. With that, this is the results of what you see here tonight, or what the council will base their decision on moving forward. I want to thank Fran for doing his due diligence in presenting this tonight. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Fran.
Next.
Okay, Mayor, number 3 on my list is a noise ordinance for intro. The city attorney wants to weigh in.
We can talk briefly about this. Under state law, our current noise ordinance is not enforceable. The state. All right. Under state law, our current noise ordinance is not enforceable. So in order for us to be able to write summonses for noise and use noise meters like decibel meters, we need to readopt the ordinance in order to comply with state law. So that's what we have. We have a couple of issues that need to be discussed about that. Specifically, the mayor's aware with respect to what we're doing on Sundays in terms of allowing any sort of residential construction or repair activity, or whether we want to prohibit that altogether on Sundays. The model ordinance that the state comes up with does permit it. Hackensack's ordinance, as it stands right now, does not. So we actually have two versions of the ordinance. The first is the model ordinance. If we decide to go forward with a model ordinance, we can certainly legislate regarding what we want to allow on Sundays in the nuisance code or somewhere else in the city code. If we go that direction, then we don't need to go for any state approval. If we adopt the model ordinance as the state has drafted it, then we're good to go. We adopt it, and we don't have to do anything further. If we want to make any changes to the ordinance, then we do have to, we would introduce it, and then we would submit it to the state, have them review and sign off on it, and then at that point we could move forward. I do believe if we want to keep the Sunday restrictions as we have them now, the state would approve that. Other municipalities that I've researched have similar restrictions, and as it stands right now, there can be no construction, and construction is broadly defined, including repair work or demolition work of any sort on Sundays within the city of Hackensack. It does not make a distinction between a homeowner and, the biggest project in town.
Is there a definition for construction and light construction?
No, it is a very broad, it says any alteration,
We make
repair. Yes, I mean, we could more broadly define construction. We could we could do pretty much whatever I think we need to do, because anything we're doing would be stricter than the state law. And the state law, they want to be careful that we're not making it less strict than the state law, but we can enforce it more strongly. So even if we allowed for certain light construction on Sunday, that would still be stricter than the state law, which doesn't prohibit it at all.
I'm talking strictly for a homeowner, not a contractor.
Mhm.
But I think I brought this point up to you. You can landscape on a Sunday in your house. at your
That's
house.
correct.
So if I use a chainsaw, which is one of the noisiest machines made, I'm totally okay. But if I'm hammering a nail into a board, I'm breaking the law. So we got to come up with some kind of balance here. For a guy who's worked 6 days a week, he's off on Sunday, he wants to repair some boards on his deck, he should be able to do that without having to pay a fine. If it's bothering his neighbors, maybe they can hash that out, or, we have to come up with some type of happy medium, because I work on Sundays on my house sometimes. I mean, you have to.
Yeah, and like you said, the state law is not very well defined when it uses the term construction. I read it, and to me, it encompasses pretty much anything other than, something where there wouldn't be any noise emanating from the house at all. I mean, if you're working inside, no one hears you, it's never going to be an issue.
Right.
But if there's any noise emanating at all, that you could be called construction. If you're working on fixing your deck in the backyard on a Sunday, as of right now, the current city ordinance, which again we need to bring up to date, or the ordinance version that we have prepared that is stricter than the state law would prohibit that, and we need to decide, which direction we're going to go, or whether we want to just go forward with a model ordinance and deal with this in some other part of the city code, like the nuisance code.
Right.
So there's a number of options
We have to
that you
recraft
need
it
to,
so it fits the city.
you need to give us some direction on as to how you want us to craft it.
Okay. Good.
Steve, is the only difference between kind of what we have now and what the model is the Sunday?
Well, the ordinance that we have in place has a lot of things that are different. I believe it's been in place in Hackensack for a number of years, and what's happened is the state DEP, they have, as they've learned more about noise concerns and what kind of damage excessive noise can cause, they've updated it. So our ordinance probably tracks the model version from 15, 20 years ago, but it's been updated, I think, in the mid-2000s to reflect the latest understanding of what the appropriate noise levels are in a community in New Jersey. And so there are a number of differences, and that's why right now our current ordinance needs to be brought up to date. We can still enforce noise right now. Don't get me wrong, but we would be doing it under the nuisance code, which is a little bit more subjective. So I don't want anybody to think just because the noise ordinance that's specific to noise, there's some enforceability issues on it. It doesn't mean that people can just do whatever they want. We can still send a police officer out. We can still have them write a summons for a nuisance. It's just we can't do it using a noise reader with a certified noise control officer.
Okay.
And I'm assuming that just because it's Sunday or any other day of the week, there's hours attached to this abuse. It's not like you can be doing
Well,
construction at midnight on a Sunday or any day during the week. Is that still correct?
Well, that's correct. So under the model ordinance and under existing city ordinance, you have different noise levels for different times of day.
And that would stay consistent with this new one?
And that's consistent. That's not going to change regardless of what we do. What we're specifically talking about here, and the sole issue that seems to be something that the council may want to talk about a little bit further, is strictly daytime on Sunday. Should you allow for residents to be able to do some sort of light work at their home? As you said, they can mow their lawn, they can cut down a tree. That's all permissible. It's permissible now under our ordinance. It's permissible under the model ordinance. But once you start getting into beyond that, the ordinance is not very precise and probably needs to be clarified to reflect the will of the council.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next.
I'm sorry. Number 5 is a concealed carry resolution. We have a request from a resident. I guess she can explain it.
Good afternoon, good evening.
Good evening.
Boss.
Pull down the
I'm
microphone.
sorry,
Just
just a
pull
little
it
bit
down. There
high.
you
Can
go.
you hear me now?
Yes.
I want to say good afternoon to the mayor and the council, and thank you for having me. My name is Rosalind Altman, and I live at 150 Overlook, and I've been in Hackensack about 18 years. So the reason I'm here is because I'm a member of the Brady Campaign Bergen Chapter, which is an anti-gun violence group. And I think I submitted a resolution for the mayor and the council to approve against H.R. 38. And what that is Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act of 2017. What this does, it forces every state to recognize concealed carry permits by every other state, in spite of our own strict requirements against guns. This would override the Gun-Free School Zones Act, which is a federal crime in our state to carry a gun in a school zone. I know the mayor and the council wants to keep our community safe, and H.R. 38 is endangering the safety of our children. It would endanger the safety of our community, and it will make it harder for policemen to do their jobs. You know, I look around and I speak to my neighbors, and we see a lot of building going on in this community, and I commend you. I think this is wonderful. We're excited about seeing the downtown coming to life, maybe new restaurants. We want people to come from other cities and New York to enjoy and feel safe in Hackensack. And if this passes, or if we approve this, if we allow concealed guns to come into our state, we might not have a safe community. And I know we want to protect our children. We want to protect our community and everyone. So I would recommend signing this resolution. And I know that the resolution passed in Old Tappan, Woodcliff Lake, Cresco, and Tenafly, and it's up for, I guess, a vote or approval in Teaneck and Englewood sometimes this month. So I hope you do vote or have this resolution against H.R. 38. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them if I can.
I do.
Okay.
I'm curious how you think that putting this restriction on here for anybody that legitimately has a carrying permit is going to alter the safety of the community. The people that are authorized to have a carrying permit have to go through a very, very extensive background to have a carrying permit issued to them. They have to be certified every year. They have to be qualified. Only the people that illegally carry a weapon, and they don't follow the rules anyway, so I'm just questioning how you think that this is going to change that path.
Other states have less restrictions. And if this passes, people from other states can come in by buses and by trains, maybe not by planes, but by buses and planes, by trains, and they can come into our community having a gun, because in their state, they are allowed to have concealed. And we don't know what their laws are. So we are really putting our community at jeopardy by not, by allowing that to happen. And that's what would happen. And with the rise of hate coming to the top, I think we really have to take extra precaution.
You also do realize that all the people under this law that are retired police officers have concealed carry permits because they're retired. You put this restriction in there, in certain cases, they're going to have to leave their weapon home. And these are now retired certified police officers that have years of experience, no longer armed.
In this,
In any state.
oh, that I did not realize.
Well-
I'm not aware of that.
Well, that was one of my questions I had, and I said, you know, about this. My curiosity is if a person has a permit to carry, right, and he's driving through a school zone, and he were to be pulled over.
That's what I'm talking about. How do you,
He's not, I mean, he's just driving down the street, like say he's on First Street going across town. How would that affect that person?
If you follow what this is providing, and unfortunately, police officers, if forced with this law, have to enforce the law, whether they believe in it or not. So my only opinion is, and I know a little something about this, is that you're really tying the hands of the people that legitimately are doing the job already. The people that carry illegal guns or stolen guns or not permitted to do so, that are involved in this violence, are not people that have carrying permits to go through the proper file the paperwork, go for the qualifications, get recertified every year, carry the additional insurance, and all the other requirements that come with this. So all the retired policemen that are retired in the state of New Jersey, and there's a large portion of them out there, are now going to be affected by this law, saying that they drive through a school zone, technically they're in violation. How can you do that?
I don't know what to say to that, but I feel that the more restrictive our gun laws are, maybe the safer we are in our community. I would not want any child hurt because somebody was having a gun from another state and was at the school and was shooting. I really would like to protect our communities.
And I, listen, I wholeheartedly support the safety of children and the people of this world. But I have to tell you, I honest to God believe that you're handcuffing the people that may be out protecting and saving people's lives, because there's occasions that happen all the time where you see retired police officers and people that have carrying permits happen to be, thank God, in the right place at the right time. That,
Let me ask you a question. What about an off-duty police officer?
well, he's covered under, he has carrying privileges as long as you're sworn 24/7, as long as he's
Right. I
employed.
was just curious. I wasn't
But
sure.
once you're retired, you become restricted by this.
Well,
I didn't know retired policemen can have guns once they're
no, most of
retired.
them, almost everybody does.
All right. Till age 72, they can carry a weapon as long as they qualify with it.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for the,
What it's talking about is the
Right.
proposal in Congress
Right.
to permit laws that would allow concealed weapons to be carried across state lines, irregardless of the current legislation that exists in each state. In New Jersey, you can carry concealed weapons, as Mr. Ehrenberg mentioned, okay, according to the laws of the state of New Jersey. But we don't allow people to come across the state line that have a right to carry in Pennsylvania to take that gun into New Jersey just because they have a right to carry in Pennsylvania. There's a proposal in Congress to make that a federal law that anybody in Texas that carries guns and they carry
Yeah,
them
that's what I was
to the
saying.
Kansas office
Okay.
would freely come into the state of New Jersey with those weapons.
Well, that's
And
actually a horse. It's actually a horse of a different color.
That's-
It's very difficult to work against that right now.
that's right, because that's going to put us in jeopardy. They can come, as I said, by train or by plane, or by bus. And that's
What I,
making
what I,
it too easy.
what I don't want to see it do is affect it. I want to know the exact effect it has on retired police officers who have the right to carry and others who legally have, and through their due process, have earned the right to carry.
Could I make the
How it affects-
suggestion?
No,
Could-
that's from another state. It's only because we will just allow another state law. They might be very lax, like in Texas, because they carry guns all the
Right.
time, to come here through, and have a concealed weapon. We don't want that.
Could I make the suggestion that we table this, get an opinion from our officer in charge from the police department and also from the
Absolutely.
Bergen County Prosecutor's Office to make sure that we are doing the right thing here?
Absolutely.
I'd ask that as
We'll contact them.
an option, just to take it one extra step before we do this.
Okay, is that the responsibility of the council, or?
No, I only made a suggestion. The mayor and council.
No,
make all these
we'll
things.
reach out to prosecutor's office. I'll have the city manager contact our officer in charge and see if any ramifications or worries that they may have with it. You know, the part I don't understand is anybody who has a gun illegally outside of this state or inside the state is going to carry it anyway.
Yeah, they don't care.
That's true, I can't
You
stop
can't,
that.
you can't stop that.
But we can
So
stop
We're
other-
only stopping people who are supposed to have guns.
Right, we can stop them.
But-
But they have their laws are much more lax.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that.
Well, I appreciate your listening to me, and
Absolutely. We'll look into it and we'll.
will you get
we
in
will-
contact with me? Should I leave my
Yes,
card?
Leave your
ma'am, I'm gonna-
contact
You just leave
information
your
with Ted.
telephone number and we'll get back
Thank
to
you.
No problem. No problem, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, next is the discussion item of sanitation collection double pickup is presented to end September 1st. It's on the, it's not noted on the calendar, but we're going to use Nixle, email, blast, and also advertise on the city website.
Fine, that's good.
So as of starting September 1st, we go
We're
back to
going back
the
to
old
sync.
schedule.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
whatever your schedule was before, just so everybody's very clear. So whatever your schedule was before, that's the schedule that you're going to resume on starting September 1st. Okay.
That's correct. All right. Thank you, Mayor. Number 6 is the outdoor cafe ordinance, which allows music outside. We're amending the current city ordinance.
I might add, I mean, we're working on that in conjunction with the noise ordinance because
Right.
they kind of go together. So I think once we decide where we're going with the noise ordinance, we'll
Only
be
thing I
able
would
to be in a
request on this
position.
noise ordinance, it just says ground floor only. And with the redevelopment going on, that there might be some balcony type restaurant or rooftop type restaurant. I would like that excluded. We also have an establishment in town who just put in, and the building owner also owns the restaurant that's attached, and I understand that there's complaints, then something has to be done about it, but I think, you know, a small speaker outside playing some Sinatra or some light music during dining is not offensive if the hours are...
Well, the noise ordinance that we're adopting, I believe, has some language that says if it's I don't have it in front of me, but I think it says something along the lines of if you can hear it within 25 or 50 feet,
Right.
then it's problematic. So however they design the speakers, it should be that the radiating noise can't be heard too far down the block. Otherwise, the conflict you would have would be you'd have something that's in violation of the noise ordinance that we're permitting via the outdoor cafe ordinance. So we kind of have to harmonize what it is that we want to do with that so that neither ordinance
Well,
conflicts with each
one of our
other.
redevelopment goals is to, you know, really push for outside dining, and that's going to be important for that to be successful.
And I think it should be consistent with the residential community. In other words, you know, folks, you live in a residential neighborhood, folks have parties and they have outdoor music as long as that music ends by the hours. I mean, it happens all the time.
Well, I mean, under the
So-
noise ordinance, the same rules apply for residential or not. I mean, if you can hear it substantially beyond the property line, technically, that's a violation of the noise ordinance. Now, of course, someone has to call and complain about it, and usually if it's your neighbor and they're being reasonable, you're not gonna be calling the police on them too quickly, but, you know, 25 feet is
Have to wait
not
till the
that.
end. We'll have open at the
Yeah,
end.
25 feet is not that far.
they open it
So
to
we need to make sure that whatever it is we do with the outdoor cafe, so we'll continue to look at that, and once we settle on that, then we can
I'm
have
just saying, I think
language
it
that
would be
harmonize.
unfair to prohibit it because we allow it in neighborhoods. So, you know, if you allow, you know, have a graduation party next door and you have speakered music or, you know, whatever it is, as long as it's within the noise levels that's acceptable, as long as it's within the time frame that's acceptable, we allow it everywhere else in the city.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you could possibly prohibit it.
It's the same rules, quite frankly, under the noise ordinance for car stereos.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's about the same 25 feet, where if you're blasting your car stereo, it's the same situation. So it's kind of hard to say you can blast your car stereo and you can't,
Right.
you know, in front of a restaurant that can't play the same music you're playing in your car.
It has to be consistent, so that, we're going to make sure that it is.
Absolutely.
Yes, and for the woman that was up here at public session, we'll be able to
Yep,
address all
I
the
explained it.
issues, all right?
Okay, number 7, discussion of the leaf bags, and it's a trial. It was brought up earlier that the city of Hackensack is encouraging residents to bag their leaves instead of raking them to the curb line and then having them removed by the city. Because of groundwater and blockage and drainage issues, that's the encouragement, and it comes from the DEP. However, in your calendar, on the red section, it says, City of Hackensack will trial new light pickup rules. All leaves must be placed into recyclable brown bags, no plastic bags. Piles of leaves will not be permitted, which is obviously voluntary. Each resident can pick up 15 leaf bags at the DPW starting October 1st at 120 East Broadway Street. So this obviously will be televised and people will get to see it. It'll also be posted on the website, Nixle, but we're obviously trying to get our city in compliance with leaf removal and groundwater issues. Because obviously drainage is always a issue in the city of Hackensack. Next, we have number
Wait,
8.
Ted, could you just explain to everyone where they would pick the bags up and how many they get?
They get 15 bags at the Department of Public Works at our DPW center on the second floor at 120 East Broadway Street during business hours. And that places those bags to the curb from October 23rd through December 16th.
Thank you.
Real quick on that as well, sorry, I know we got a lot to do, but that they get 15 bags for the season, correct?
Yes.
That's it. So once you go through those 15 bags, folks, you're on your own to buy bags. And it is on trial basis. If I'm going to try to bag all my leaves at my house this year, I have Borg's Woods behind me, I have a tremendous amount of leaves. I have 15 bags out the first windstorm. But, you know, we'll still be picking up piles. But I totally agree with the need to keep the leaves off the streets because those leaves end up in our sewers, which cause a tremendous amount of problems. And flooding, and this will be one way to alleviate that. So I'm asking the residents out there to please give this a shot, try it, use the bags. They're pretty cheap. I think you get 10 bags for like $3 or something like that, $4. try to use the bags if you can. If you can't, put them on the street, we'll still pick them up. But we're pushing forward to try to clean up the city and help our sewers out a little bit by keeping them unclogged and alleviate some of the flooding that we experience. Thank you.
Okay, number 8 is the Sussex Street redevelopment investigation resolution. This is the former Social Security building. They are seeking a 15-year pilot, but nowhere close to that discussion or stage yet. But this investigation has to be approved by the mayor and council for a non-condemnation redevelopment investigation, which will eventually go to the planning board, and we'll start the process to see if it passes muster.
Thank
I'm
you.
fine with going forward with the redevelopment investigation as long as it's made crystal clear that there is no guarantee of any type of
Absolutely.
pilot as part of this investigation.
Right.
So it only puts them in a position where they can be considered for a pilot, but it certainly does not guarantee it in any way, shape, or form. So I think we just have to, just because those words were in there in their message, I think we have to be, we want to be very upfront with people and make sure they understand that.
Brian Nelson has made that, I think, pretty clear to everybody that this is a journey and it starts here, but there's no guarantee. Just because you start the process, there's no finish line guarantee that you're going to get that.
Ted,
We
you've
just
been in
start-
some of these meetings, these folks like to just all of a sudden come
Right,
up
well,
with
we had
these
the meeting, so you-
assumptions
right.
that never were there. So I believe it's best to start people out crystal clear. This is the expectation. If you still want to pursue it, we're with you. But
Right.
Agreed.
Okay.
So there'll
What
be
takes-
a resolution authorizing the directing of the planning board to undertake a non-condemnation preliminary redevelopment investigation to determine whether the delineated area of Block 208, Lot 22, 20-28 Sussex Street satisfies the criteria and designation as an area in need of redevelopment. Okay, number 9. Number 9 is the Shade Tree Commission, and we have some citizens here. They look like they might have time. We need some new members on the Shade Tree Commission because they're in desperate need. So we certainly could use some volunteers. I see some hands raised, right?
No volunteers, huh?
Well, we're gonna have to do something because.
Is it on the
we're
web-
getting the
is it
cry for
Institute a
help.
draft?
Is it posted on the website?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And for those out there in webland and TV land that are watching this, it's very simple to apply. You go to the website, fill out a request that you'd be interested in participating in the shade tree, taking care of our trees and replanting trees and making sure that we're restoring trees that are damaged is a very important part of keeping our city looking as good as it possibly can be. So having folks participate and help us in that effort is really great. So anyone who has that interest, and we'd be very happy to see you volunteer and be part of it.
So we have a nice lady that just walked in. She's forever talking about trees. We need you to volunteer to join the Shade Tree Commission.
Of course I should.
Okay.
There you go.
So you just come right over and leave your name, and I'll make sure that we reach out and contact you.
That was easy.
You can come over and do it. It's okay. I got plenty to read. Yeah, I got one volunteer already, right? I saw your hand go right up.
Openly recruiting.
Well, look, you gotta get them any way you can. Number 10, Bergen County Regional Development Committee reappointments. This is an ongoing practice, and currently Wayne and Albert Dibb are our designees. And the prior city manager was the alternate. So now with this reapproval and submittal, Albert and Wade would continue, and I would fulfill the alternate position if approved by the mayor and council.
Sold.
I had a feeling that might be approved. Public comment, time limits, or conversation at council meetings. Because the COW meeting, thank you so much, and we really thank you for your service. There is now a taped recording of the COW meeting, which is a new phase that the city had not had prior. So now, because of our meetings, and candidly, I had 18 items for tonight, the city of Hackensack seems to pick up speed with things to discuss an agenda. So there's been a conversation that maybe it's time to start to, because people have the chance to come to the COW meeting and also to the regular meeting, that instead of 5 minutes for each, that maybe there be a limited time or a reduced period of time for conversation and comment. And the words I've heard is expressed is between 3 and 5 minutes for that process. I'm not advocating to make them longer. We certainly encourage residents to have their chance to express themselves to the mayor and council and to the public at large because they're recorded. But we also have a process, and we certainly have an agenda to get through, and allowing that timeline, if you made it 7 minutes apiece and then, 12 people got up, you start to do the math, you could really protract these meetings way into the future. So I like to be very precise, see if the city can come up with some conversation, because they're going to get essentially 2 opportunities, and I think sometimes, I don't know this to be factual, some people came here as a pre-meeting to have a conversation, and then later we heard a very similar conversation again. Now that it's recorded, everything that's said either in the COW or the public meeting is documented, so.
Do we know what the Board of Ed time limit is?
Board of Ed's 3 minutes and 1 minute.
Yeah, I mean, I would not recommend anything, beyond 3 minutes. I think 1 minute is awfully tough,
No, can't do it.
for conversation. But 3 minutes is pretty standard, so, we just need some direction from you on what kind of ordinance, if any, we draft. It's just pretty simple ordinance. Whether to just make it 3 at the cow, if we leave it as is, we don't have to do anything. 3 and 3, 5 and 3, whatever the council's thinking makes sense.
My personal thought is, I think that COW meetings are basically work sessions for people and the council to have time to kind of reflect on things. When we get to the regular meetings, they seem to be much more business-oriented. So I would make the suggestion that we maybe remain 5 minutes for the COW meetings and limit it to 3 to the public meeting. One, it'll encourage people to come earlier to start this process, and then maybe, but it's certainly up to the mayor and council.
I personally like 3 and 3.
I'd like to wait till our other 2 council members are here at least to weigh in on it, because we are a skeleton crew tonight, and there's no great rush on this, but.
No, it's just for efficiency of the council, whatever.
I understand. Yeah.
Whatever you believe.
And, go ahead, Ken.
The problem becomes with, I agree that this is the meeting where we should be having more discussion, but the problem is if this meeting goes too long, then our executive session really suffers.
Understood.
So, you kind of, we really have to control both of the meetings to a certain extent. I don't know,
Well, I think that.
I think we should wait for the rest of the
No,
council.
no, I only bring this up as a
Yeah.
conversation. Certainly, I'm not looking for a decision tonight, it's just a discussion. We do have a discussion next, number 12, is the vacation of Poor Street, and I will turn to the city attorney for his.
Yeah, I mean, this is very simple. I think we may have even talked about this in the
Yep.
past. There's a piece of property that is surrounded by the company that owns the Crow's Nest. And technically, it's a street, even though there's no cars on it, and it's completely surrounded by a parking lot. But I guess when Route 17 came in, that street no longer became any sort of active use to the city. So apparently, a local garage, I mean, Ted can clarify, but apparently a local garage is using that space to park vehicles on our property for repairs. And the owners of the Crow's Nest have come to us and said, this affects our parking, it's unsightly, what's the deal with this? And we looked at it, and it seems that there's absolutely no need for us to have this property. Certainly, it helps a local business. So the intention would be to just simply vacate the street. Under the law, it will revert back to the surrounding property owner, which is the owner of that property. And at that point, they would be able to direct that garage to stop parking vehicles on this property. I mean, obviously, we can go out and we can send a constable and do that sort of thing, but it's resources that we don't need to spend. There's pretty much zero benefit to us having this property because, again, it's completely surrounded by private property.
Right.
There's nothing we could build on it. There's no road we could use. So the intention was to just, clean up this spot and make it less unsightly.
And then the city no longer has to maintain it either. So
That's correct.
pave it,
And we
don't have
collect
to
we collect
clean it,
taxes on it, too.
Clear it.
Yes, exactly. It'll become a tax-paying property. We will not be responsible for
Right.
maintaining it. We do not assume the liability for it. And, and the ownership of the Crow's Nest, I forget the name, it's in the resolution of the, or the ordinance
We've
of the
talked
owner.
about this before.
We have, they'll, if there's engineering costs or anything involved, they've agreed to reimburse us for that, so this will be done at no cost to the city.
Just to be clear, if it was a property in the middle of two adjoining properties, each one of those property owners would split that property, but in this case, the property owner, it's in the middle of the
That's
property
correct.
owner's
It's
property.
a
basically.
fairly unique piece of property.
Right.
The
So
way
that's
it
why he would
exists. And if you
be
go down
entitled
Route
to all
17, I mean, you could drive down there tonight and you could see, vehicles parked there, and they brought this to our attention, and
Right.
they've looked at it and they've said, hey, this is actually your property. What are you doing with it? And so this seemed like the easiest solution, because there's no productive use we really could put to this property.
Okay. Next.
Okay, number 13 is the Hackensack Adaptive Signal Project, which is a revised interlocal between us and Bergen County. We do have Pete Tenke here, but I don't know if Pete needs to weigh in on this one. On the River and Camden signal, this is the replacement of all the traffic signals that run basically the length of the city of Hackensack. River and Camden signal will be owned by the county after it's improved. Also, already states that the county will own River Passaic signal once that intersection is completed. So this very large project, an expensive project, will basically transfer who maintains these lights and the ownership of them. The county, like most of the counties in the state, are basically watershedding responsibilities for traffic lights and trying to make them part of the municipality. Unfortunately, they also make them the maintenance. Here, there's some give and take through the shared services agreement that's been reviewed by our city engineer and also our city attorney. And this project's been on the stove here for about 2 years, to my understanding.
And we actually adopted a resolution, I think, in the last meeting regarding the grant funds on this. And I also have a clean, I received the cleanest, most updated copy of the agreement from Bergen County today, so we have that. The version we had some red lines, so I'll make sure that gets to you guys before it gets signed off.
So this change tonight is actually moving the responsibility for two of them from us to them, and that's
Right.
what we want to
Once
see.
they're built.
That's
Once they're
correct.
built. And so pretty much this enables them to own everything that's on River Street as far as signals.
Just
Yes? Pete's shaking his head, so I think that's a good thing, I agree.
We had Pete look very carefully at the revisions, and I think he's represented to us that he's satisfied the agreement will be beneficial to the city.
Onward.
Okay, number 14 is a fiscal safeguard resolution. This is urging the state to put out fiscal safeguards in place to ensure current service remain available to New Jersey citizens who are most vulnerable residents. Children, families with full range publicly funded programs each year for mental health and addiction services. The goal is to serve the residents of the community through adequate services access, not at a higher cost by adding to it jails or emergency rooms. Basically, this is a proactive counseling, work with these residents to try to, put them round place, round hole, in a sense of trying to get these people the services and needs assessment instead of doing nothing, wait till they either violate or become a problem, and then we kick in social services or law enforcement or public health to address these issues. So this is the requested resolution to join in that fight. Number 15 is a resolution adopting a cold sterilization ordinance. This is a discussion item. Our city attorney has not completed the due diligence, but maybe he can update you on a few.
Yeah, I mean, we are researching this as I have learned, because I was not really familiar with what this is. This is a method of disposing of medical waste in which some of the wastewater goes into our sewer system. And I think there's some real concern about allowing this process in the city as opposed to simply moving it out, via an industrial waste hauler or some other system, as we understand, like the hospital uses, for example. We're just trying to, kind of focus on the correct language, since it needs to be more precisely defined, since the term cold sterilization isn't exactly the way that this process is described. So we just want to make sure we don't inadvertently prohibit something that we're not intending to prohibit and allow the thing that we're trying to ban. So we're working on this, we're researching it, and we think by the next meeting we'll be able to move forward with an ordinance that would make this a prohibited use anywhere in the city, and prevent it from going forward.
Number 16 is a RFQ for engineering services. City of Hackensack currently has 4 engineers. We put out an RFQ for services, and all the respondents responded back. So because of the volume of work that comes in and the issues that the city is challenged with, I made a recommendation similar to Mr. Kleiman, who did with the legal services, to expand our engineers and improve the engineering services so we have more options to pick from. And obviously, we can assign work. So I don't want to say we can speed up this process. I don't know how candidly we could go much faster, but we certainly want to make sure that we provide enough time to make sure that all the due diligence is being done. So with that recommendation, I sent you folks a memo dated August 11th, identifying these firms and ask you to approve this expanded use of engineers. And we're only going from 4 to 7. So we only are adding 3, but like I said, we're gonna go through the process, and hopefully this will work to the favor of the city as far as having coverage and certainly fee scheduling.
And all of the qualifications have been thoroughly vetted and reviewed, and you're happy that they're consistent with this?
Yep.
I mean, what we were also hoping for is to get maybe some specialty engineering. I mean,
Right.
any of these folks
And
have
we
some of that?
And we have added traffic, environmental, and general engineering.
Perfect. So that's a good idea. That's a good
Okay.
step. Thank you.
Number 17 is an issue with an easement with PSE&G.
Yes, that's correct. So this has been kind of an issue that just needed to be clarified. The city previously granted an easement to PSE&G, as is fairly common, so that they could install various, I don't even know exactly what you'd call it, but various utilities within this particular piece of property. Our understanding is that the meets and bounds that once everything was done, they didn't quite match up with what's been recorded. So this is essentially to correct and clarify that, so that the easement is over the correct piece of property within the city. So, we have the meets and bounds. We have, we've had our engineers look at it to make sure that this is correct, and once it's done, it'll be recorded. And, again, it's not expanding the easement, it's just simply clarifying that we have the correct location for it.
It's just a modification.
It's a
Yeah,
modification. The
They're just moving
easement-
where they asked for the easement.
That's correct.
originally, so
The
it's in
easement was
another
already
position.
granted.
No more square footage, really, than,
That's correct. PSE&G paid for this easement back in 2015 when it was first
Right.
adopted, and I guess at the
we're
time,
just basically sliding the easement over.
That's all.
that's correct.
what's happening.
I know there's a gentleman from PSE&G. If I've said anything that's incorrect, he's welcome to
Here?
jump in and say I was wrong. So
Okay,
Steve, you're absolutely correct.
thank you.
that's why they brought me in.
Just needed a nod, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, 18, and the final issue is recycling committee. I have had several conversations with residents, and some of them include concern and interest in recycling. Sheely is our recycling coordinator. And one of the things that I think would be helpful to the city is to expand and certainly encourage recycling and going green as much as we possibly can. This expansion would include our park, schools, and redevelopment. And what I'm going to try to do, similar to some other things that have been spearheaded by residents, is basically set up an ad hoc committee and let them start to do some of the research, bring some fresh ideas, maybe other communities neighboring that have found. As the city manager, I would love to get involved in so many things, but unfortunately, the day-to-day operation really kind of gobbles up my time. So anybody that can present ideas and information that we can certainly go through would be helpful. So I'm going to appeal and we're going to post on the website to consider citizen leadership forms that people can pick up and volunteer to basically start this ad hoc committee and look at recycling. Now, I know that, I'll take Wawa's for instance. Wawa's has recycling barrels out in front of them. 7-Eleven and other ones, they basically pay their private vendor to take that away and basically separate the recycling out. But I think that if we can identify either the proper recycling containers or somehow, I've, in my prior service, looked at clear bags. If we can recycle or take out of our tipping fees, and that's the fee that we pay for sanitation to truck our waste to a transfer station and separate this out. And we didn't have to pay that in the tipping fees, and we could do this. One, you get a little money back, even in this economy, for recycling. But more importantly, we'll drop the weight, which is how they measure that in the back of these sanitation trucks. So if I could control the cost of what we pay for tipping fees, I could actually lower taxes or certainly help provide funding for different programs. The city of Hackensack can only increase this budget by 2%. So I think it's incumbent about city managers and staff that work here is to find alternatives for residents and council members to try to find a way to basically wring this towel, so to speak, and see what we can come up with on different ways that we can control these costs. One, all these plastic bottles that we drink out of, unfortunately, wind up in some landfill and they don't, but if we melted them up or reused them or cleaned them or whatever they want to do, that would be a good thing. So I'm not here to reinvent the wheel. I just think that if we could just start to take these steps, because unfortunately, every time it rains and I go to the water and sewer department and the street department to start cleaning catch basins, we have all this plastic and all this stuff and this piled all over the city. One, it looks horrible. Two, we know that it's going to wind up in our oceans and our river, and we should find and we should be better. We should be good stewards for the future, for our kids and grandkids and everybody else. So I'd just like to start that conversation. I haven't committed to anything, but I just would like to at least give it a shot.
I would call Mr. Calcaterra and get him involved.
He's at the top of my list. He is one of the residents who was trying to twist that towel and happened to be my
Great.
arm. So he said that he would take up the challenge. So
Yep.
listen, public support and certainly a good idea with the enthusiasm behind it is usually a done deal. So I encourage him and all residents to
Why don't we-
please join us.
Towns with successful recycling programs, why don't we reach out to some of them and get some tips from them?
Well, he's about,
No, he's
he's
involved with
about
that lady from
2/3 there
Seacole.
already. He says,
Actually.
I have all the, I said, great, I'll make the announcement at the next cow meeting and we'll,
Good.
belongs to me.
Paul and Calcaterra.
He's just a
citizen
resident,
who's very
just-
involved with recycling.
Just like all you folks sitting right here, he's just a person in the city who's a resident who feels the need to take up the challenge. We have a lady that is going to try to control violence citizen activity and getting involved is the purpose of volunteerism. If we had to hire somebody to sort all this out, that's why we encourage residents to be proactive and bring these issues to us. I thank you.
Thank you.
And that would complete my report, sir.
Not bad. All right. Need a motion open to the public, please.
Offer.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Von Rudenberg is absent. Deputy Mayor Canestrino?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Sims? Councilmember Pataglia is absent. Mayor LaBrus?
Aye. Please come to the podium. Give your name and address to the clerk. You have 5 minutes.
Peter Marcus, Annie Davis Avenue, Hackensack. I'd like to talk with this pregnant schedule that you have here for about a half hour, but I see I'm going to be limited. But since there's a few things that just came up along those lines, I would just say, speaking quickly, 5 minutes during the council meetings for public comment. Debbie's got her timer, the timer goes off, gavel comes down, finish the sentence, that's it. And this idea, stop the clock, give and take, I think you were very appropriately say, I'll answer when you're done. If you want to make a public statement and you want to spout off, and that's the purpose of that time, say whatever you want, you got 5 minutes, then sit down, and we'll answer your questions when everybody's finished. The other side of the coin is, this is a good working session. I mean, we should all be really raising our hands and having give and take. There shouldn't be a public session. It should be total public session. The problem is, you have the executive session. Used to be the Cal meetings were on a separate night. I applaud you guys for not wanting to come out another night. But I do think when you have an agenda like this that requires a lot of suggestions on the part of the people, that people should be able to ask. Some of them are simple yes or no questions, and they can be answered right away. You don't even have to get up to the podium. Just raise your hand. Yes, what do you want to say? You see this all the time on other smaller municipal meetings, that are videotaped. In Maine, for example, the backwoods of Maine. But anyway, there's a lot more give and take between the council members and the residents for some practical answers. I just want to say a few things. The Shade Tree Commission, I was under the impression that there were people on it and just about gave up. They said, no, the Shade Tree Commission does nothing in Hackensack and it's not even worth being on it. Some people thought it would go someplace. They said it never did. And I question, the value of the Shade Tree Commission. The DPW goes around cutting down trees. The Shade Tree Commission is supposed to be actively involved in that. Does this tree come down or not? Well, I don't know whether we have arborists on the Shade Tree Commission or not. I don't know whether we have trained arborists on the DPW that can say this tree is defective, this tree is diseased. They just took one down last week on Lewis Avenue, on Lewis Street, which probably wasn't bad, but it came down anyway. Another one a block away was totally diseased, and that came down. My question is, does the city replace every tree that it takes down at the city's cost? I think they should. Owners can always purchase a tree if they want, and the public right away between the curb and the sidewalk, but I think if the city's gonna take trees down, they should put them up. We don't have an ordinance prohibiting people from taking trees down on their own property.
Right.
Perhaps we should. Perhaps we should say, you cannot take down a tree without a permit. We'll inspect the tree, and if we find out that it's coming down, and we give you permission to take it down, which they probably could get, probably you couldn't prevent them, but you could tax them for the removal of the tree so that you could purchase a replacement tree to be planted someplace else, so that we keep the recycling green in the city. Just a couple of ideas.
Good idea.
What else? Recycling. I know we have problems with the trucks. Again, this is the second week in a row where they've collected the commingled plastics, aluminum, in a truck and thrown all the cardboard and paper in the same truck. I don't know what that does at the sorting station, as we sell this to the recycling centers. Is that a problem, or do they just say, you gave us a load of crap, we're not gonna separate the cardboard from the aluminum because it's not separate? Obviously, it reduces the tipping fees, we don't have an issue with that, but by putting them in the same truck, I know last year it happened, and I was told that there was a truck that was broken down, so they were doing the best they could and it wouldn't happen again. It happened twice now in 2 weeks. So I don't know what the story is there.
I will get you an answer.
Okay. No, I don't need the answer. The city needs the answer.
No, I'd like an answer.
Yeah.
No,
What that was happening.
I want to hear that.
Okay. I don't want to, and again, the offenders on the trees are also public service. They just whack the trees any way they feel like it,
Right.
probably killing many in the process, just to make sure they don't interfere in the wires. Again, what would a Shade Tree Commission have to say about that in terms of controlling public service? Another question to be asked. And just on the paving of streets, I don't know whether Hackensack is doing any paving yet. I haven't seen any. Maybe they are. Tedesco is doing a great job in Paramus. They've done Forest Avenue, Fairview Avenue, and Kinnicamack Road are all paved. I hope
Right.
they do Summit. I don't know whether that's on the calendar or not. But in Hackensack, we have a couple of issues. One of them, the road less traveled by, Maple Avenue from Pangbourne to the railroad tracks. Who would want to pave that, Well, it is really bad. You can't even drive on it
It is
without
bad.
it being, it is really
It's
bad.
that short block.
It's a short block, and it's been let go. And also, by the way, Public Service trenched it last year when they put in new gas lines. So
Right.
that's probably that's probably a candidate for a joint effort. And
I'll
the
have
other
Ted
thing would
put
be, and
that
this
on
is
the
something
list.
that you may have to look at, and that is the Route 4 exit where it says, "Welcome to Hackensack," and you go over Coles Brook, And you're really, until you go over Coles Brook, you're in River Edge, and it's only a 20-foot by 20-foot section. That is a disaster. That's all potholes.
He's writing this all down, so he'll have to
It reflects badly on the
look
city
at
of
it.
Hackensack. I think whether you get River Edge to do it or we do it and say thank you very much because it says welcome to Hackensack, it's a point well made.
Good point.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, sir.
Thank Pete.
Next, please.
Jerry Weber, 245 Prospect Avenue. I'm a member of the Hackensack Condo Board, and you know we've been working with the city administration, Teterboro Airport, our senators, and the FAA about this concern that we have over the planes flying over the city. You know, they fly Saturday, they fly Sunday, they fly in the middle of the night. I was wondering if we couldn't do anything in terms of a noise ordinance. It is a terrific annoyance and safety matter, but you've mentioned noise ordinance. Why can't we get that covered?
Well, unfortunately, when it comes to aviation, and then I think Kathy has probably said this a million times, state and local laws are preempted by federal law and the Federal Aviation Administration. So we can only regulate within the appropriate sphere of influence that we have. And when it comes to planes and plane noise, it's beyond our capacity to control. We wouldn't be in a position to, you know, in order to enforce the noise ordinance, we have to have somebody with a machine with a decibel meter. You're going to have to go find that plane and serve that plane with a summons. And again, that it wouldn't be enforceable in court. So there's got to be another tack to deal with airplane noise. Unfortunately, our ordinances are not going to be helpful in that regard, I'm afraid.
And I think, you know, the best way is what we've been talking about, or I've been talking about over and over, is we have to get our residents to call these things in, you know, because they do track that information. They have to do that. They can isolate and identify it to a particular aircraft. And, you know, if it happens frequently enough, that airline gets fined or that aircraft even gets prohibited. So what we can do is, as you well know, I'm sure we've talked about this together, is we have to get our residents, you know, on a campaign to be able to start logging these complaints. And later on, I was going to talk a little bit about this later on. I'll advertise the number, you know, so everybody hears it and sees it on their videos. But right now, that's what we're bound by. And they do track that information, so I think that's our best. I wish we could enforce it, but
It would be great.
Send the constable out to Teterboro and
Good
just put a
idea.
ticket on the windshield of all the
Good
planes.
idea.
It's a great
Good
idea.
if we could do it.
But just take note, who knows what the Biagio is from you folks? The Biagio is that rear engine aircraft that pushes the aircraft instead of pulls it. It's very, very noisy. It's a twin prop. Have you guys heard it? I'm sure you've heard it coming over your buildings. Since we complained about that aircraft at the FAA meeting, I have not seen one Biagio fly over Hackensack. So, you know, chipping away at this is the right way to go. Keep working with them, keep making the phone calls, and, you know.
And taking the pictures. I mean,
And
I,
take
you know,
pictures,
I'm
absolutely.
preempting myself from later, but those are the two things we can all do right now. Is
Right.
I have a number and a backup number written here that I'm going to announce later. And, you know, I'm going to ask everyone, add it to your contact list in your phone, you know? So if you're out, you're in the
Yep.
street, you're in your yard, whatever it may be, and you hear something loud, all you have to do is dial that number. All you have to tell them is and they know the time, but you should just state it's 7:15, I'm at 60 Central Avenue, and there's a noisy aircraft overhead. They have to, their responsibility is once it's logged, they will identify what that is, and they track these things. And when too many complaints come in on these certain aircraft, those aircraft get fined, and in some cases, they get prohibited for a period of flying into the airport. So if nothing else, I think it helps from having some of these aircraft fly so low that they're even noisier, because they're going to get summonsed. So, you know, we have a longer-term plan that I'm going to talk about at the next COW meeting. I'm not going to steal my own thunder because we had way too much tonight. I asked for time tonight, but we had too many items on here. But next COW meeting, I'm going to give a presentation. I'm going to go over the presentations that they gave, and then I'm going to publish it also on our website.
Next, please.
Talk to. My name is Ann Stern, and I live at 151 Prospect Avenue in Hackensack, which is directly opposite the restaurant. We don't want any music. It disturbs our shareholders. We have no objection to the awning. We have
Right.
objection to the music.
But if it's music that you can't hear on your side of the street, would still object to it? If you couldn't hear it, you'd object to it,
I happen to live at the back of the building, so I probably do not hear it.
right?
However, we have a whole bunch of people who live at the front of the building directly opposite the restaurant.
Right.
And we have had complaints.
Oh, I know. Believe me, I've heard the complaints, I've seen the complaints, I've been in discussion with the owners, the city manager's been in discussion over there, or constables, written tickets. What we're talking about is a very low profile, very quiet. You know, if they tone it down and somebody's dining, you got a small speaker with very low music coming out of it, I don't find that offensive. You could have somebody across the street in your building could have their window open, playing a stereo, bothering the people in the Excelsior. Are they breaking the
Then
sound?
they
Are they
call and they
breaking the
complain
sound
to the
ordinance?
police, and the police
But they're-
come
but
and
they're
say,
not-
shut it
but they're-
down.
But they're not legally breaking the noise ordinance, is what I'm saying. If you're blasting your speaker during the daytime, all right?
Right.
And it doesn't reach a decibel level that's illegal, all right? They're not breaking any ordinance. He could be bothering people in 2 or 3 buildings, is my point. I'm looking to find a happy medium where if they want to play some light, I'm not talking about blasting rock and roll or loud music. I'm talking about some light music outside. And this would have to be enforceable, all right? If a neighbor complains, somebody goes and tells them to shut it off. That's what we're looking at.
If it's in
But-
violation.
If it's in violation. But, you know, would you tell everybody in your building they can't have their window open and play music? What's the difference?
Don't ask me a question like that.
Well, it's a fair question. You
It's a
can't just
fair
say
question,
you
and I
can't
have
play
a big
music, but
mouth.
he can play music. I mean,
No,
I'm not looking, I don't want them bothering people.
This started for me last summer when they had somebody who was playing there. And
Right.
I was not only in the back of the building, I was upstairs by our pool.
They were playing outside? They shouldn't be playing outside,
They were
number one.
playing outside, and I took my little body and I walked across the street and I
Right.
said,
We're not going to, as you'll see later on, as the ordinances come through, there'll be no
well,
live
they told me
entertainment
it was a
outside on
one-time
your
happening, it
property.
wasn't a regular thing.
Right.
But I will tell you, I stood there and looked at the Sherbrooke and the rental next to me.
Right.
The Pierre. And I couldn't figure out where the hell the movie,
Wow.
the noise was coming
Well,
from.
noise
and I
will
went
travel,
over there.
it's hard to pinpoint.
And when this came up, and we were not notified when you did the gates
Right.
and the awning. I went over there, and the woman at the bar told me that it had been settled. I said it didn't because I know there's a meeting coming up.
Right, hasn't.
She recognized me from last summer.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, did I want to say anything else?
Listen, the last thing we want to do is upset people in the neighborhood, or let them upset people in the neighborhood. But we do want to, a restaurant owner has an outside dining area,
Yes.
has some light music playing, and it has to be off at a certain time. I don't know how you could say you can't just, he can't play it, but he can play it. I don't know how you can legally do that.
I'm just saying I don't want the music.
I understand that. Point taken. Thank you, ma'am.
Before we close, I just wanted to update, I did forget to say publicly that the sanitation trucks have been delivered. They're just waiting to put the bodies on. We should have the trucks by September.
Oh,
Great.
wow, that's great
That's
news.
great news.
That's great.
All right, more trucks, folks. 3? 3 trucks? 2 trucks, okay.
2 next year.
Motion to close the public.
Offer.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Von Rudenberg is absent. Deputy Mayor Canestrino?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Sims?
Aye.
Councilmember Pataglia is absent. Mayor LaBrus?
Aye. Okay, need a motion to go into closed session.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Von Rudenberg is absent. Deputy Mayor Canestrino?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Sims?
Aye.
Councilmember Pataglia is absent. Mayor LaBrus?
Aye.
Whereas the
folks, we-
mayor...
Are we
Go
going to
ahead.
go into close now, or are we going to go after? We do have a number
we-
of, this is going to be, there are a number of things. It'll be,
All right, then we're going to take a recess. We're going to have to go in
What
afterwards.
time is it now?
it's 8 o'clock.
It's 8 o'clock.
I'll have to do it later.
Take a quick
So-
3 or 4 minute recess, then we'll go into closed session. All right, we
So-
won't go into closed session. We'll come back to,
So we're
next
not going to close now.
We're not going to
We'll go
close
into
now.
close after.
I need a motion to adjourn the executive session, please.
Offer.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Von Rudenberg is absent. Deputy Mayor Canestrino.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Sims.
Aye.
Councilmember Pataglia is absent. Mayor LaBrus.
Aye.
And I'll just put on the record, we did also speak about the ongoing ZISA litigation, in addition to the other case I mentioned earlier.
Thank you. And a motion to close cow session.
Offer.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Von Rudenberg is absent. Deputy Mayor Canestrino.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Sims.
Aye.
Councilmember Pataglia is absent. Mayor LaBrus.
Aye. Everybody have a wonderful evening. See you in 2 weeks. Thank you for coming.
3 weeks.
Have a safe, 3 weeks. Have a safe ride home.